So in chapter 11, we're going to introduce two different market structures, which will be the two market structures that refer to imperfect competition. So if we think of a timeline between only one seller where we have monopoly, and if we have an infinite amount of sellers, we have perfect competition. Well, in the midsection here, we would have what we call imperfect competition. And within imperfect competition, we're going to see oligopoly and monopolistic competition. Okay. It doesn't really matter which one's left or right here. It's just they're both in the middle range. What's the big distinction between the two of them? Well, when we were thinking of perfect competition, we had four big assumptions. The four big assumptions were perfect knowledge, like we had for all the other ones. We had an infinite amount of buyers and sellers with free entry and exit. And then we had identical products. Here with oligopoly, we have limited sellers. And we have identical product, or close to identical products. And yes, sellers can enter and exit. Might be a little harder in this market structure, but there could still be entry and exit. So a different type of industry that could satisfy this oligopolistic market structure that we see is just simply gas stations in Sherbrooke or any other city. Okay. These gas stations are providing a service, gas, good, that's relatively the same for everyone. Like, I don't see a difference between the gas of different gas stations. But there's a limited amount of sellers. So because of that, they have some sort of market power and they can choose their own price. Okay. But because of this situation with very few firms, it's easy for the firms to collude. And collusion is when you act as a monopoly to maximize joint profits. So how would this work? Well, in practice, actually, in Magog a few years back, the gas stations were given a big fine because they were found to be colluding with one another, which meant that they were meeting or discussing between themselves and charging a higher price for gasoline than would normally be charged if they were competing against one another. So let's say now firms, gasoline stations are charging $1.18 a liter, and they decide to meet up and they say, well, we can make more money if we all increase our prices in a big enough area and people don't really have other options. Well, they'll probably keep buying from us. But if we increase it too much, they might go to different cities and it's hard to control for all the other cities. So let's go from $1.18 to $1.25. And they'll just think, well, the costs have gone up, the barrel of oil or something has changed, therefore the cost must be higher. Let's do it this way. So as soon as they agree on this, at $1.25, while some of them may want to charge less or more, or would be willing to charge less if they needed to compete, but they're all happier to charge a higher price if they think they're going to sell just as much gasoline. So this collusion is this kind of situation where you act as a monopoly to maximize profits. So you're restricting output because as you charge higher, less people will be willing to buy, and you charge a higher price than your marginal cost in this situation. But here, when we're dealing with oligopoly, we're dealing with identical products. So because each firm wants to maximize its own profit, there's a possible conflict between self-interest and cooperation. Because in this situation here, if everyone decides to charge $1.25, you might have an incentive to go and decide, well, everyone met up, everyone discussed, a phone call was made in the morning, we're supposed to charge $1.25. You see everyone around you, you look across the street, they're changing their price to $1.25. You may be tempted to charge only $1.22 in the end. Because at $1.22, it's still more expensive than it was before, but you are cheaper than everyone else in the city. And by being cheaper than everyone else in the city, you're going to start attracting people. So there's this self-interest versus cooperation. You want to cooperate because if you're all cooperating at $1.25, you're making more profits than if you're all competing at $1.18. However, there's this self-interest idea that might make you want to steal some market share from the others. So each firm has the incentive to steal some market share to maximize their own profits, which resorts to possible cheating problem. Okay? So the profit level of an oligopoly is determined by two things. How much output you produce, or you could think of output, or what price you decide to charge. And also you could think of the output level, but output and price are linked. So it could be the price level of other firms. It ends up being the same thing. So if you charge less and they charge more, you're going to get lots of consumers. But if you're on the other hand, everyone charges $1.22, and you're the only one charging $1.25, you're going to have very few sales. Even though you can make more money per liter, you won't sell that much. Therefore, your profit levels will be lower. But these strategic interactions are hard to evaluate. They're hard because you're like, okay, what's the price that they're going to charge? How will this be done optimally, and everything else? It's not as easy as the extreme cases of monopoly and perfect competition where you could assume a lot of things out. Here you kind of have to deal with these strategic interactions a little bit more. And when we discuss strategic interactions, we're going to get into one of my specializations, which is game theory, which is the theory that we use in economics when we want to look at how different people that are optimizing, different people or firms that are optimizing at the same time, how they interact and how they react to one another. It's not true that a firm can simply decide, I'm going to drop my price to $1 a liter, and that all the other gasoline sellers decide to keep charging the same price as before. They're going to react to this in some way, shape, or form at some moment. Might not be completely instantaneous, but it's going to be pretty quick. So there is a reaction. Whereas if a monopoly charging a certain price for a beer at the Bell Center decides to change the price for their beer, it's going to have an impact on people's decisions, but it's not going to have an impact on firms around them because there's no other beer selling company within the Bell Center. It's all a monopoly. So it's a different situation that we have there. But we have to take into account these interactions. So this will resort to the next video on game theory, which is a very important and for some people a low complex video. So you might want to watch it at least once and then maybe look at other game theory videos online or take a look at it again and give the different problems a try to make sure that you understand it clearly.